It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders rocking out. Alan, you're in your car. You're taking an afternoon drive. It is 60 degrees here. This feels good. This feels real good. How we doing?
Yeah, I feel like the music hits a little different on like that first nice day after it's been cold, driving around. I got the sun on my face. I had the window down. Obviously, I got to put it up for you all, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, man, the music just hits a little better today. Let's go.
Here we go. There
Let's
we
do
go.
it.
And of course, Brandon Rossi's voice accompanying that makes it hit
Yes.
all the much more. Absolutely. A couple things to get into. We got a lot of questions, obviously, from the YouTube community that we're going to dive into. You had a comment that somebody wanted us to go like position by position, basically, and maybe dive into just some interesting things or people that you met with or learned from the NFL Combine. So we can do that as well. But I actually want to start somewhere else, just because I feel like we have to touch on this. I saw a lot of conversation about it. I had two people DM me, asking if it changed the market at all. Saquon Barkley getting an extension that like you would not see ever. 2 years left on his deal still, just 1 year into this new 3-year deal with Philly. They reward him with an extension, an over $20 million per year running back now in the NFL, and what this could mean potentially for Najee Harris. Not saying he's the caliber of Saquon Barkley, but there's not going to be like that much of it. It raises the price for everybody that's hitting the market, right? Is that how you're looking at it? And what could change about Najee Harris's market?
Yeah, I mean, that's how this works. If somebody goes out and just blows the top off the market, and not only is it over $20 million per year on the extension, 2 years, it's got $36 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey had the previous biggest contract. It was 19 per year. Okay, that's not that big of an increase, but he only had 24 guaranteed on a 4-year deal. This is blowing the guaranteed money out of the water. So yeah, this is a big deal for running backs. This absolutely raised the price of every single running back that's going to sign the rest of this offseason, because that just set the top of the market.
Yeah. So does that change the number that you had envisioned at all in your mind? I know the Steelers were interested to a degree in bringing him back. We talked about that number being somewhere between like 6-7 million. I had heard, he was hopeful. His team was hopeful. He could get 10 to 12 on the open market. Do you think that number is still reasonable, or does it even go up more after this?
I don't know that it raises the ceiling of what I thought he was capable of getting, but it like I thought it would be between about 9 and 12.
Okay.
Maybe like 8.5 on like the very low end. Now I feel like it'll almost certainly be over 10. And like there's a possibility that he could get over 12.
Yeah, man. That's crazy. We'll see
Spotrac
what happens with Aaron Jones.
low, but PFF predicted 3 years, 11.5 per months ago. So like, I don't think over 12. Like, again, the Steelers turned down 6.9. He will get closer to double that than that. Guaranteed.
What a scenario for Najee Harris, by the way. I don't know how he felt himself when the Steelers declined that 5th-year option, but whether it was a blessing on the surface to him or just a blessing in disguise that came to be, what a great situation for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers will be fine. I think they turned down good value with that 5th-year option. I think the quality of the draft class and the fact that Najee wasn't necessarily the best fit in Arthur Smith's offense means I don't think this is some kind of like colossal screw up by the Steelers. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great deal for Najee Harris.
Yeah, I'm not saying that like there has to be a loser in this situation between Najee Harris and the team, but I just feel like he's definitely a winner with them not picking up that 5th-year option. The other player I wanted to bring up before we dive into everything else was Davante Adams. We knew he was going to be cut, but that's officially happened now. And, obviously going to be the talk about Aaron Rodgers is also the talk that he certainly wants to be on the West Coast. I jokingly said, does Pittsburgh count as the West Coast, which you responded to. But in all seriousness, Davante Adams' services certainly going to be coveted. He's another one that you could lump into like that elder bracket of the free agent market, though. Again, it's like old guys, these guys coming off major injuries, and he just kind of fits right in with what this free agent market is.
I think Davante Adams is a bit of a different breed in that, yes, he's older, but he wasn't injured, and he's still been highly productive, even in not great circumstances. Like, you look at, like, Stephon Diggs, like, coming off an injury. Look at Nuke Hopkins, like, yeah, he didn't put up great numbers
Amari
this
Cooper.
year. Yeah, right. Amari Cooper was awful in Buffalo. Oh, I actually did learn at the Combine he was dealing with a wrist injury that required surgery. And so that's why he didn't produce in Buffalo. So that's interesting. But again, put them all in the same bucket. Like, except I don't put Adams in that bucket. Yes, he's older, but he's not the same. I think you're still getting a highly productive wide receiver if you sign him. Now, that being said, for many reasons, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll play with Aaron Rodgers if that's feasible. I think he will go to the West Coast. If that's not, I think he'd really love both. Hello, Vegas. Back? How about that? That'd be interesting. Whatever. I just, it doesn't seem like he has been over the last couple of years primarily motivated by money. He wanted to go with Derek Carr, who was his college quarterback. He wanted to go back with Aaron Rodgers, who was his previous pro quarterback. He doesn't seem like his primary motivation has been money, and that's really all the Steelers have going for them. That's good enough about 80% of the time. Seems like Davante Adams, that might not be the case.
Yeah, to me, like, even if they were talking about this on the Pat McAfee show too. I still view him. Yeah, I shouldn't have said probably words the way I did. I think he's the number one receiver in this free agent receiver class for sure. I guess the question is in terms of like the amount of term that you want to commit to him. Like, how good do you feel about him for 3+ years? Like, there's not really a receiver out there that like you can stamp like a 4 or 5 year contract to guarantee a bunch of money and say this guy's going to be productive the entire way through. Even in the case of Davante Adams, who I feel really good about for probably two years at the very least. How long beyond that, I'm not sure. But for the Steelers, isn't even a conversation. That was a good point too. Like, for Aaron Rodgers, we know the options are going to be limited. For Davante Adams, obviously going to have more than that if he's willing to play somewhere without Aaron Rodgers. I think a team like the Chargers would make a ton of sense. If not not for Aaron Rodgers, for Davante Adams.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just we had a lot of comments when we were talking about Deebo Samuel yesterday. I think I started a bunch of them, but like, people saying like, which wide receiver would want to come for the Steelers? The reason the Steelers haven't signed a wide receiver yet is from the Steelers end.
They'll come. The Steelers are going to have a quarterback. No one out there thinks the Steelers are not going to have a quarterback, and they know roughly in the range of the kind of quarterback the Steelers are going to have. Either it's going to be Justin Fields, or it's going to be Russell Wilson, or maybe there's a small chance it's Derek Carr or Sam Darnold or like Daniel Jones. In terms of like attractiveness to a wide receiver, those guys are like this far apart. Nobody really cares. Like they're all the same, and that level of attractiveness is good enough to get, like I said, 80% of the guys. That money matters more than everything else. The Steelers have plenty of it. All the rest of that stuff is window dressing. If the Steelers get to the free agency and don't have a quarterback, and I don't think there's almost any chance of that happening, but let's just say the Steelers get to a free agency and then have a quarterback, they would be able to sign a wide receiver in the first 5 minutes of free agency, no problem. Now, the wide receivers all stink, and that's not a great situation, but like, not having a quarterback will not be holding them back from signing a wide receiver at all, even a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, do I have to bring up this scenario again? We're coming off just last year with Calvin Ridley signing with the Tennessee Titans in their situation, the biggest free agent contract that was given out last year for receivers. How much more evidence do we need to say that receivers will follow the money?
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's easy stuff, man. Like that.
Oh, actually, somebody replied in the comments saying this. Yeah, shout out to Eric who said money talks. Look at Calvin Ridley last year. So yeah, there you go. We got people in the comments that are fighting the good fight here for us.
There are wide receivers on bad teams all over the world. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, so that was where that was it in terms of that stuff. Obviously, one of the questions, or not even necessarily a question, but somebody commented, this is from Eric. Same Eric posted this as well. Always enjoy the conversations, but was hoping for post-combine discussion this week. Not just top surprises at the combine. That's all over the place with AI generated, but real specific for the Steelers. Like, how did Will Howard really have a disappointing showing? Where did this Zoff Frazier cornerback come from? What's up with Devin Neal running 4.5 plus when a record number of running backs ran sub 4.5? Should we look elsewhere if Neal falls to us on day 3? So somebody just like, I feel like each day that you were at the combine, we were talking specific positions, what you heard, what you saw, but like just in terms of recapping the whole thing, talk about interesting stuff to come from it.
Yeah, I guess we didn't touch on some of the stuff that happened over the weekend there as well. But yeah, I thought the quarterback drills, I thought Will Howard was pretty bad. I thought Quinn Ewers was very bad. I thought Jackson Dart looked better than he did when I saw him at the Senior Bowl, which is not saying very much, but I'll say it. I thought Jalen Milroe looked a lot better than he did at the Senior Bowl as well, which I knew was going to happen because Jalen Milroe has a ton of arm talent, and this is a much more controlled environment where it's a lot easier for him to show it off. He's going to look even better at his pro day, where he's throwing to receivers he knows and he's comfortable with. That's just sort of the natural process of it. So I feel like from the quarterback situation, it feels like that's the QB2 battle to me, Milroe-Dart. I don't think anybody else is really in that conversation. I think the hype about Tyler Shough has been completely overblown at this point. He's interesting but not good. So I think if you're looking at quarterback 3, I'm going to write about Milroe, I think, tomorrow. But I think he's the most interesting of those guys just because of the athleticism. And I don't want to give the whole story away. I might have to wait till tomorrow to find out everything I heard about Jalen Milroe. There you go. We'll tease it.
Well, okay.
I did give you guys yesterday the nugget about George Pickens, which I wrote today at SteelersNow.com. The Steelers are not, in fact, actively shopping George Pickens in terms of a trade. Not saying they wouldn't listen if somebody really wants him, but they're not out there dangling old 14 in a trade type scenario at this point.
Well, today's his birthday, so we had to at least get past today, and then maybe you can look.
Maybe I put that story out there today, thinking there would be a little more Google traffic for George Pickens, because it's his birthday. Wow. People clicking on stuff. Always got to be a step ahead, Smitty. Always got to be a step ahead.
Love it. I wanted to ask you in regards to Milroe and Dart, though. You said QB3. Possible that some teams are going to view one of those guys as QB2 over Shedeur Sanders?
No. I mean, maybe there's some team that thinks it, but I don't think there's enough for that to happen. I do think there is a big gap between Ward and Sanders, and there's a big gap between Sanders and everyone else. I talked this morning about the possibility of Sanders falling to the Steelers. I don't really buy it. I'm also not sure that they would take him, even if he did. But, yeah, so I'm doing a first-round mock draft right now. I got Sanders going at 6 to the Raiders. Like, I don't think that the Sanders falling narrative is real. I think teams are disappointed with what's out there. I don't think he necessarily comported himself particularly well in the interviews that I saw, but, like, what's out there? Teams need quarterbacks. They're going to overdraft them. It's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see it either, but I was curious. I guess, it only takes one, right? Like, if there's a team that really likes Jackson Dart inside the top 10.
Oh, God, no. Come on. Get that out of here. No. Nobody's. Like, I don't know what the absolute ceiling for Dart would be, but, like, it's probably the Steelers. And they're not going to do that.
Okay. All right. I haven't put out a mock draft yet, but I'm thinking of putting him way higher than I feel like he should be.
I'm doing that with Milroe, I think, will go far higher than people think. Let me just say that.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit of salary cap stuff here. Desert Cactus, who's always.
But wait, there was one more thing. More thing in that last comment. Devin Neal didn't run very fast. Don't worry about 40 times for running backs. It's not that important. Le'Veon Bell ran a 4.6. James Conner ran a 4.65. Najee Harris didn't run, but he ain't that fast. It's not a big deal because change of direction is far more important for running backs than straight line speed. So I don't care that much about a running back's 40.
How did Devin Neal do in like the splits and the cone drill?
I thought his 10-yard split was good. I didn't see if he did a 3-cone and a shuttle. I didn't see it. A lot of guys didn't.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. All right. Yeah, I don't have concerns in terms of like I'm not sitting here questioning Devin Neal's speed because of
he can get to the edge, man. Go watch the tape. That's all I care about. Like, I don't really care about the 40. Running backs also, like, wide receivers are running unencumbered when they run. DBs are running unencumbered when they run. There's no traffic. They don't wear very big pads. They're not like trying to set something up later. They're just sprinting on the field. You're never, almost the only time you ever see a running back run unencumbered is after he gets past the last defender. That is basically the only time their 40 speed matters, is the ability to score a touchdown once you're behind the last defender. Other than that, a running back is always running with like 5 other things going on around him that is not just means it's straight line speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Desert Cactus, he's always in the comments here. One thing I'd very much like to hear your thoughts on is this general fan confusion about the salary cap. Cowboys had $3 million for 2025, just signed Adigizua to a 4-year, $80 million deal. Parsons extension still needs to happen. Chiefs had $3 million franchise tag Smith for $24 million. Steelers currently sit around $60 million for 2025. Point is, teams can push cap spending into the future, and that the Steelers have barely done that along at all, along with the fact that they have a ton of space already for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, there's levels to this. The Steelers do a lot of that. So, like, when you're going to see TJ Watt's going to get a contract extension. To use round numbers, let's say he's going to get $40 million a year. Okay, so let's say it's a 4-year, $160 million contract. So you would think $40 million a year, right? But his cap hit this year is going to be like 8, because the way they're going to structure this contract is, so let's say it's 4 years, 160 million with $40 million signing bonus. Okay, so that $40 million signing bonus gets paid up front. TJ gets $40 million in cash. Not necessarily this year. You can actually negotiate the payment structure of the signing bonus, but it gets accounted for up front, and then that gets split out over the contract. So that's 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million for that signing bonus in 4 seasons. He gets paid $40 million up front, but it gets spread out over time. So then his salary this year will be the minimum. So he'll make 41.9 million or 42 million, whatever, this year. Okay. And then next year, the rest of the salary, you can divide it out, and it won't be the full amount, because you'll leave the last year high, because that year won't be guaranteed. Probably this year, I mean, obviously a little salary, who cares about guaranteed? Then next year he'll have a guaranteed salary, somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say it's, 25 million. So his cap hit will be 12 million this year, and 35 million next year, and 40 million next year, and then it'll all catch up at the last year, which point you'll either re-sign them or you'll cut them, so you don't have to pay the end of it. So that's how it works. So yeah, like when you sign players to new contracts, that first year is often at a very good discount. And the reason you do this is the cap is going to go up over time. So when you're looking at the 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million for TJ for that signing bonus, the 10 million today will be a larger percentage of the salary cap than that 10 million later. So you want to push as much of that money into the future as you possibly can. Steelers do this all the time. You can actually do something else called void years, where you add years onto the end of a contract after the player will definitely be cut. So if you want to put 2 void years on that contract, then that signing bonus gets split up over 6 years instead of 4. Now you're splitting it up, whatever. I didn't leave myself easy math there, but you're splitting it up into even smaller pieces over more time. And then when you cut them, there's this big chunk that's due at the end. But yeah, so like when you see the Steelers have 60 million in cap space, and you want to say, oh, well, they're going to sign, they're going to sign DJ Reed at 20 million a year, and Darius Slayton at 15 million a year, and Justin Fields at 20 million a year, and you think, oh, they almost spent it all. No, they will have spent like 1/5 of it, maybe, at that point. Like, it'll all still be there, because those cap hits aren't going to come due until far later.
Yeah, specifically with the void years. Not to say that they never happen, but I feel like that has become like much more common recently. I'd say since like the COVID year. I feel like ever since then, it seems like they've been much more, unless like, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. I was missing them, but I feel like they've been much more common, not just for the Steelers, but like everybody.
Yeah, they started becoming a thing, I'd say like in the middle of last decade. And then when the cap went down in 21, I think they become like an essential part of business for everyone. That's the first time the Steelers did it. I think that's the first time they really had widespread acceptance as a tactic. And now, of course, you're seeing the Eagles like seriously lean into it, where they're putting a ton of money into void years. If you do it as much as the Eagles do it, you're setting yourself up to eventually have to have a year like the Saints are having right now. The Saints did it a bunch too, by the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you just do it a little bit, you can lean on the fact that the cap is probably going to go up, and you don't ever really, like, the bill never really comes due for your overspending.
I mean, and look at what's happened with the league, with the salary cap the last 2 years, like for teams that have like just watched it totally balloon. Now to say, is it going to happen by 20 plus million every single year like it has the last two? I'm not going to say that. I think, the international games additions have obviously played into that, just how much money the league is bringing in with revenue. But there's also like, isn't it almost, there's some calculation that has to be involved with that for the teams too, though, right? I mean, they have to kind of project what they're expecting that to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's the financial leaders of every team. Sometimes it's the general manager, sometimes they have a president, sometimes it's the owner, whatever. It's kind of their job to understand the way the wind is blowing, what's going to happen to the league and to the salary cap, and decide how much risk they want to accept on those future contracts. Look, 18 games are coming, and the revenue is going to go up when it happens. The players are going to get their share, no doubt, but you got to think that's going to be making a bigger salary cap, right? So, like, I think there's reason to be bullish on the NFL continuing to grow its revenue in the near term.
There's this very interesting question that's here, and it's not related to what we were just talking about, but just as I'm scrolling, this is something that I can't say that I've thought a ton about. I'm curious to see if you have an answer on, just from conversations that you've had. B-Wise says, we all know players work constantly in their craft. Do you think Tomlin puts the same effort into becoming a better coach? And if so, what are some examples?
It's a good question. I did see this one. I guess it depends on what you mean by a better coach. I don't get the sense that at this point in his career, Mike Tomlin is taking any organizational leadership classes this offseason. I don't think he's attending any coaching clinics about, how to install a defense. I think he spends a lot of time, similarly to what we were just talking about in terms of the owners projecting the finances. I think when you're a head coach and you've been a head coach in the NFL as long as he has, he's got to figure out where trends are going and how teams are going to try to attack him before it happens. That's how he spends his time trying to improve. So, like, what are the what's going to be the thing that comes out of this season that we all say, oh, here's the new trend in the NFL. If you can get ahead of that, especially as a defensive coach, in terms of how you are going to stop things, then that's a big deal. Or, like, for example, let's think of a team that maybe so like the Commanders, right? The Commanders had a really good year, and they go out there and they lose in the playoffs, right? So you're going to look and like, how did the Commanders get beat? What are teams going to learn from that they're going to try to apply it to next year? Then what are the Commanders' counters to those going to be? And you can kind of do that when the Commanders are on an opponent next year, but for all over to try to see like the way the wind is blowing, how things are going to change, what's going to happen. I think he spends an unbelievable amount of time in that every offseason. Doesn't always get it right. I think it's hard. It's hard to predict. But yeah, I think that's a big part of what he does. For sure.
You know what I think about is like understanding the people. Like, think about how different human beings are from when he started coaching to where they are now, and just like understanding that there's obviously like the way that people were when they came into the league in 2007 when he was getting started as a head coach aren't the same type of people that are coming into the league now, and understanding the humans that he's coaching as well.
I think he's been absolutely masterful at doing that. You remember in training camp when he put the picture of the black Air Forces on Instagram, and then his defense went out and started a bunch of fights in practice that day. And I'm like, this guy has been coaching since 2007. He's posting on Instagram, which was founded in 2012, about a meme that started in about 2020 to get his players fired up in 2025. Like, that's incredible. But also, like, I don't know, Mike, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just my gut feeling. I think that kind of comes naturally to him. I don't think he's out there thinking about what he's gonna do to get the guys going in training.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just, I think that's just, I think it's just how he is. I think that's, I think that's just a part of his personality.
And maybe that's not, maybe that's not an area where he's necessarily improved as time has gone on here.
Oh, I think his adaptation is impressive, though, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing, and honestly, we probably should have talked about this when we brought up this name earlier, but Carol asked specifically about one player here. Hey guys, great show. Look forward every single day. We appreciate that, Carol. She says, question, if Milroe was still on the board in round 2, do you think that they would pull the trigger? And I'll add to that and ask, would you? Not just will the Steelers, but would you?
Yeah, I mean, as always, I have to like give this caveat every time we talk about the draft board. It depends on who's on the board. Like, let's say the Steelers drafted D tackle in the first round, and they're looking at like Trey Harris, Elikai Minor, Jack Besh, Jaden Higgins, and thinking like, all right, we got one of these guys. And then 52 rolls around and all those guys are gone. Well, then you absolutely take Jalen Milroe, right? Like, why not? Or, you know, let's say they do the opposite, right? They sign they go Egbuka in the first round. They're like, we'll get TJ Sanders or Alfred Collins or Deion Walker or one of those guys, and they're all gone. Yeah, then maybe you go off the board, or maybe you trade. You know, I think the Steelers, I was told early in the process that the Steelers like Jalen Milroe more than the consensus. I haven't heard a lot about their specific interest in him since then, but I think anytime you don't have a quarterback and quarterback looks like decent positional value, you should consider it. I think they would consider it. I think he's decent value at 52. That's below where he's being mocked at mock draft database right now, and I think that is below where he will end up being taken. I don't think he will be there. Would I do it? Yeah, I kind of like Jalen Milroe. This is one of those questions, though, where it's like a lot easier to say yes if you don't get fired if it goes badly. Like, if you listen to draft analysts on the internet, they will always argue for better talent, high upside players over high floor, safe players. And the reason they will do that is because, one, that's the right thing to do, but two, they don't get fired if it goes wrong. And that is just human nature. Like, yes, if you look at it scientifically, you are better off betting on upside. But also, you are betting with your kid's college fund. So how aggressive do you want to be? Like, that's the way it goes.
It's a lot easier to say that you'll take the swing when you're never going to come to the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, I would take Jalen Milroe in a heartbeat. In fact, I wouldn't think twice about it. If I was Omar Khan in his shoes, that's a little more difficult.
Yeah, I have to think about like the specific situation, how the board would have to look for me to say that that's what the Steelers should do. But in terms of the value, to me, it seems like a fine spot to take a swing on that type of player. Like, I have no clue if it's going to work out. I lean towards there being a better chance that it doesn't. But just like
here's the one thing I will say about Milroe is that he's such a good athlete that I think you have some fallback if things don't work out as a quarterback. Like, you kind of get Taysom Hill in the worst case scenario.
Yeah, like, somebody mentioned that, like, him being part of you never want this to be the case, but almost like a QB by committee if it fell into that situation where I guess maybe Taysom Hill is the way to look at it too, but like what the Steelers maybe could have been with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields if they wanted to be.
And hey, if they want their backup skill set aligned with their starter, I mean, he's a better runner than Fields, maybe.
Could you imagine if they threw them both out there on the field at the same time?
I can, and I would if I had them both. I would.
Yeah. So for me, honestly, Milroe at 52 is one of the spots where, like, I think that is the one of the very few spots where it lines up in terms of, I don't necessarily think it's super realistic, but like, could he be there? Sure. And I would be okay with him doing it. Everybody else, it's like, at least in terms of where they're mocked and stuff, either far
that's
too
the
early
only
for me or not
quarterback I want where they're being mocked.
Yeah.
That's the only one I want. Like, I don't want Dart in the second round. I don't want Ewers and Howard in the third round. I don't want Shook in the third round or fourth round even. Like, I don't want Riley Leonard in the fifth round or Dylan Gabriel in the fifth round. Like,
those guys being talked about in the fifth round.
Or give me Brady Cook or Seth Hennigan or
Yeah,
Curtis Rourke or one of those guys way in the seventh.
I saw somebody comment on a Facebook post of the sites. I think it was related to a quarterback, and somebody commented and said, take the kid out of Missouri, which would be Brady Cook, and they said in the third round. And I was like,
You could probably get him as an undrafted free agent. Like there's like a 50-50 chance that he'll be there.
Yeah, I don't think that third round pick is going to have to be utilized to get Brady Cook services if you're that interested in it. But I'm assuming that it's a Missouri fan that commented that.
I don't know. Yeah.
But who knows?
They're trading up to 2 to take Luther Burden in this scenario too.
There you go. Hey, all of a sudden, I guess you just said that. He's another name that's been popping up in some recent mocks. I don't know that we've talked about him a lot. He measured a little bit better than I expect him to at the combine, though. So, like, should he be on the Steelers board? Should he be being talked about?
I'm not a huge fan. I might go back and rewatch some stuff. Feels a lot like Deebo Samuel to me. And, like, while that's good, I also think most of what's available to the Steelers is, like, slot receivers of some form or fashion. And I would want a guy that I feel better about playing outside.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've been. That's why I added, like, he measured a little bit better. Like, so if he could play outside, maybe that changed the conversation a little bit.
Yeah, and I mentioned Matthew Golden not having a good combine, and everyone's like, he ran a 4.2, and I'm like, yeah, he's 5'10". That's the part that I don't, or 5'11", whatever. He's not very tall, right? Not that mattered to me more. I knew he was fast. If he's going to be an outside receiver, I mean, there are not very many guys. Like, you can have some dudes that can be 5'11" outside receivers, but they got to have amazing releases, and I have not seen that on tape from him. He is fast, though.
Obviously not. I wasn't part of that conversation. I just saw in the comments a lot of people. I think they thought you were mistaking Isaiah, like the Texas receivers, for each other.
Isaiah Bond is not very good. He was way overrated early in this process. He's gonna be like a 4th round pick.
Yeah, he shouldn't have even been talking about breaking the 40 record and then to do what he did in it. And
the slower of the two Texas running backs. I think Jaden Blue outran him too, didn't he?
Yeah. Which I would have predicted to happen. I mean, yeah, I think Jaden Blue's being slept on a little bit in this running back class, by the way.
He went up like 100 spots in the mock draft database since the combine.
Yeah,
So
I expect
the sleeping is stopping.
There we go. People are waking up. Anyways, Alan, before we get out of here, tell people they can find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the word, sign up for SN Plus so that you can help pay for me to go to all these crazy places. Owners meetings are next, end of the month. Looking forward to that. Got some guests lined up for the rest of the week. At least one, anyway. Gonna keep working on that. And, yeah.
Wait, are the owners meetings always in Florida?
No. Alternates between Florida and Arizona.
So it's in Arizona?
No, it's in Florida 2 times in a row. I think they owed somebody a COVID year or something.
All right. Got it. All right. Noted. Anyways, yes, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell here. Do the same thing. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, leave us a 5-star review over there. I got it. Bring those in because I want to read them on the show as well if you're listening on a platform as opposed to watching here on YouTube. Leave us a comment if you are here on YouTube, though, whether it's a question, topic for a future episode, all that good stuff. Be sure to follow us everywhere. Hit us up on TikTok as well, Steelers Afternoon Drive, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.